As far as week one is concerned, and the discussion and what we're going through today, today's semi lecture, which was only going to last about 45 minutes, is really going to be about um, the rise of world civilizations, how we got to become civilized human beings, basically. And civilizations in this case basically means the rise of cities, city states in which one person or group of people happen to be in charge of organizing laws, organizing people in terms of labor, organizing people in terms of being able to rally them around a particular religion or culture, and so on and so forth. All of that took, as far as the history textbooks are concerned, from roughly the beginning of humanity until about roughly, give or take, 5000 BCE, with the big event of about 12,000 years ago, 10 to 12,000 years ago, known as the agricultural revolution and the domestication of animals that led to the settling down of humans from hunter-gatherers to agriculturalists, or what we commonly know as farmers. Okay, farmers and herders, right? Herding cattle and sheep and growing wheat and barley and other stuffs to eat, right? Those sorts of things. Now, in talking about that, there are essentially five big pieces of information that you need to know in terms of the process of the rise of civilizations. One is being able to figure out what plants that you could plant and grow in a particular region in order to feed yourself and your group of folks. Whether that was 140 folks, which is the standard size of a small tribe prior to the agricultural revolution, to feeding a city of at least 2,000 people, right? So that's what we're really talking about here, roughly between 12,000 BCE and 5,000 BCE, right? So that's one, domesticating animals for food, for clothing, for milk, for to feed folks. To use domesticated animals to do things like haul heavy materials, those sorts of things. That's part and parcel of the agricultural revolution. So it's obviously agricultural revolution slash domestication of animals as part of this process, right? And figuring out which animals can you domesticate. You know, sheep, goats, chickens, pretty easy to domesticate, as opposed to zebras and lions and tigers and elephants, which you can tame, but you can't fully domesticate. It's not like you can go to a pet store and buy any of those, or if you do, they're certainly illegal for the most part. And even when it is legal, it becomes fairly obvious after a few years that raising a teenager or adult tiger is probably not a good thing. Okay? So, just as an example, there are other sorts of things that are part of this process too. Where once a group of people decides to finally settle down, they need to settle down at a place where they have clean, fresh water, usually a river that has a steady supply of clean, fresh water, like say the Tigris and Euphrates rivers in the Middle East, or the Indus River in what's now Pakistan slash Northwest India, right? The Ganges, which is in central and eastern India, the Nile in Egypt, um, the Mediterranean for that matter, in northern Africa. You need to settle in places where there's fresh water available in order to have something to drink while you're growing all this food and domesticating all these animals, right? Then, people eventually settle down and you have to be able to store this stuff. And if they're storing the stuff, that means you can't be moving around from place to place in order to do so. That's where, you end up folks having permanent settlements. Instead of using just pitching tents, they start building huts made of thatch roof. Eventually, they start building stone homes made of stone and mud brick. And eventually, if you get enough of those homes, you don't have a village anymore. You have what would be called a town or a city. And then you have to have leadership and division of labor in order to make that work. You still need people to farm, but you also need people to organize stuff so that people know when to harvest the food, when to plant, when to otherwise do other things like make tools in order to plow fields, make tools in order to eat the food, make tools necessary in order to haul all this heavy stuff. I mean, bushels and bushels of wheat have to be hauled somewhere. You don't want to use labor, just use human labor for that. You need baskets. You need to make pottery in order to store stuff. Those kinds of things. And that's what leadership comes in. And if you get leaders strong enough to organize people, then you can figure out ways in order to, if that leader dies, to have another leader, either through heredity, meaning their son or their daughter becomes the next leader, or by voting for it. And that's where you get the formation of city-states. And that doesn't take place for the most part until about 5,500 or 5,000 BCE. But all of those, the agricultural revolution, the domestication of animals, being have a consistent, clean, fresh water source, being able to store food for the long term, which means you have to settle down, the development of villages, and being able to communicate in terms of a common language and a common leadership and a common system of leadership and a division of labor. All those are part of the rise of civilizations. Now, what I've just told you in a nutshell, this in this quick, 6.5 minutes, are the basic facts based on what archaeologists and anthropologists and historians and other folks have come to understand about the rise of early civilizations as far as humanity is concerned in places like Mesopotamia and other parts of the Middle East, in the Indus Valley region, in India, and what's now China, and in East Asia, along the Yangtze and Yellow Rivers, in Egypt, and in other places. These are all part of that process. Did they happen exactly in the order in which I just said them? No. Some folks might have leapfrogged an extra 500,000 years ahead. The Middle East was first. There's some evidence that takes it as far back as 12,000 BC, which is 2,000 years before anyone else would have actually thought that this would have happened, which is part of why I'm saying to you that this is not just purely about facts, it's also about being able to interpret those facts and understand these processes. Now, there are some of you who are going to be of the opinion that, based on your literal interpretation of the Bible or Christianity or whatnot, that won't believe that any of this could have happened before approximately 4,000 BCE, period, right? And I only bring this up to make another point, which is an important point to understand throughout this course, that it's not about your belief, it's not about your feelings, it's not about your opinion. It's about facts we have in evidence, the evidence that we have backing those facts, and the examples of those facts and evidence in order to formulate some sort of interpretation. That's what we do as historians. That's what good history students do, or at least learn how to do in order to become historians. And that's what we're doing in this course, is beginning that process of trying to formulate ideas in terms of interpretation. Right? So that's what we're talking about here in terms of understanding the difference between an opinion and an interpretation. An opinion really is just that. It's just an opinion. My opinion is that people in the DC area are a bunch of freaking wimps because they can't seem to understand that snow is part of the 4 seasons. When winter comes in this part of the world, sure enough, at some point, there will be snow. And when there is snow, when you have snow plows, you can clear streets. And when you can clear streets, you should be able to do things like go to school, go to work, get out of the house in a day when there's barely 6 inches of snow on the ground, just as a for instance. Right? That's an opinion. My opinion is that DC area residents are wimps. But that opinion is just that. In this case, it's an opinion. It's based on something. Most people don't know, even with that, the opinion I just formulated, to even go where I went in terms of evidence. I actually have some evidence to back up this opinion, but it's just an opinion. In this particular case, I am no more qualified to call DC area residents wimps than anybody else is, right? Even if you were a DC resident that was born here and you were 98 years old somehow and you've never left the area, how does that make you more qualified as a DC resident to say that today's DC residents are wimps compared to other periods? It's based on your perception, not really on reality. Have you done a research study to show that this is the case, for instance? So that's what opinion is. It's about your perspective, your perception of things versus someone else's perception, which is probably equally valid. That's opinion. Interpretation is different. It's not just the fact that it's based on facts. It's based on facts that people have done research on, that people have looked at, that people have done work on to earn degrees in order to be able to say that this is the way something happened and this is why it happened the way in which they said it happened, say it would happen. Okay? So, on that basis, when you make the argument that all of these components, fresh water sources, being able to domesticate certain types of plants and plant them year after year and watch them grow, and certain kinds of animals as well, right? The ability to organize people in terms of villages, to organize them in terms of leadership, who's a leader and who isn't, what kinds of labor you perform, whether you're performing religious rites or whether you are making tools or you're making pottery or whether you're harvesting products and storing them or guarding those said products to keep thieves away and those sorts of things. All those things are part of the rise of civilization. And all those things are based on not just basic level factual evidence, but factual evidence has been further researched and joined with processes that understand how and why these things actually happened, when they did happen, based on weather patterns, based on overall change of climate in the Middle East and other parts of the world that happened roughly around 12,000 BCE, right, the end of the last ice age, based on evidence from broken shards of pottery in all these places around the world found roughly within 2,000 years of each other in terms of dating them, those sorts of things. You can then formulate an interpretation based on a hard evidence, not just sort of anecdotal evidence, your sense of things, your perception, but actual evidence that people have been gathering for years and years and years. To some of you, that might just be an opinion as well, but that's an expert opinion. It's someone who's a cultural anthropologist or an archaeologist or like me, a historian, who has spent upwards of 10 and 20 years doing research on different ideas, writing about different subjects, meeting with different people, digging up, in some cases literally digging up evidence or finding that evidence and being able to use it. That might just be an opinion to you, but it's an expert opinion, which therefore means that it's not that your interpretation isn't equal to my interpretation, isn't equal to someone else's interpretation. And that's the difference between interpretation and opinion. All opinions can be equal, but not all interpretations can be equal. Not all evidence can be equal. That's why some evidence is more correct than others. The use of some evidence is more correct than others in terms of interpretation, those sorts of things. And so bringing this back to what I brought up earlier about literal interpretations of the Bible, that in the context of this course, it's fine. I have no doubt that some of you don't believe in what I'm saying here as far as the first week of the course is concerned. It's not about your belief. It's about learning the material so that you can get the best grade that you can. And I am telling you that in order to learn this material, this is the stuff that you have to know based on the interpretation of literally hundreds of scholars, if not thousands of scholars, who have worked on this issue for literally a couple hundred years. Okay? So, I would go with that for the course and not so much put your beliefs aside, but understand that your beliefs are different and therefore in a different space than the space that we're occupying in this course here. So I'm making 2 points here. One is about what we're learning first week. The other one's about understanding that, please, in your post, the one thing I don't want to see you do over the course of the semester, and I don't want to have to keep correcting, is saying, in my opinion, in my humble opinion, I believe, I feel, those kinds of things that people tend to say when they're having, low-level conversations about the weather and stuff. You need to be able to say, that the evidence suggests X, Y, and Z. Not about whether you believe that evidence or not. It actually doesn't matter to some extent whether you believe it or not. It's about what the evidence suggests and says and what the interpretation can be based on that, but not about what you personally believe, what you personally feel, what you personally have an opinion on. I want to make sure that that's clear to you, that that's not what we're doing in this course. Okay.